Hey y'all, Jeff Nowak here, WWL and Audio Digital Sports Producer, and I'm here for a quick rundown on my take on what will be probably the most burning question of the Saints offseason. And that is, as it says right here to my left, right, I always get turned around in these things. It will be, who is the next Saints starting quarterback? And as anyone who follows me on social media is probably already aware, I think that's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. Now, that's not the most popular of takes at this point, but with what has happened in recent days, being that the biggest trade targets for the Saints have been traded or committed to playing where they are. That's Russell Wilson, who the Seahawks got a king's ransom for in trading him to the Broncos, and Aaron Rodgers, who the Packers were able to re-sign to a massive $200 million contract for a guy who's entering the latter stages of his career. You know, that really simplifies what the Saints are looking at. And what the Saints are looking at is really, to me, going to come down to, are you able to sign Jameis Winston, or do you have to play the field? And, you know, my take kind of revolves around the fact that I think Jameis Winston, being the top free agent available at quarterback, is going to get paid. And I am not convinced the Saints are going to be able to be the team that pays him. And it's not particularly complicated why that is. As we all know, the Saints' salary cap situation is well documented. They're about $40 million over the cap right now. There's some questions how they're going to get there, but they have enough restructures in the bag where they can get there pretty easily and make some signings. So I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue as many people might lead you to believe it is, especially from the national media perspective. They love talking about the Saints salary cap. It seems like they are willfully ignorant on the situation, and you know, be that as it may, I don't see it as big of an issue for a lot of the Saints free agents as people want to believe it is, in terms of Marcus Williams, in terms of Teron Armstead, in terms of all these guys who are going to be free agents. The Saints did not franchise tag Marcus Williams, so they will have to try to re-sign him. But I do think at the quarterback position specifically, where you are going to have to make a decision where you're going to commit to multiple years to a guy, I'm not sure the Saints have seen enough from Jameis Winston where they're going to confidently say, yes, this is the guy for the future. This is the guy we're going to give multiple years to, and go from there. I think that you're going to see the team really kind of take a step back and look at the team around him and know that you have a win now defense, know that you have a win now team, and you want a guy who you don't have to have injury questions about. You don't have to have, fit questions about. And I think those do still exist with Jameis Winston. Who they didn't exist for as late as 2019 was Teddy Bridgewater. Now, I can confidently say that when the Saints re-signed Teddy Bridgewater as the highest paid backup in the NFL for the 2019 season, it was not with the idea that they just desperately needed security behind Drew Brees. It was with the idea that he was going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints when Drew Brees retired. And the problem was the Saints just didn't know when that was going to be. It's a situation you've seen with a lot of teams. You saw it with the Patriots. They decided to move on from Tom Brady and allowed him to go sign wherever he wanted. He went and won Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Bucs, still a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, but they let him go because they wanted to move on. The Saints didn't do that. The Saints chose to ride it out with Drew Brees and take another shot at a title in 2020. I think it was a little closer than most people want to believe it was. The injuries in that season really piled up. The broken ribs, the collapsed lung, all of that kind of played into what ultimately was a divisional round loss to the Bucs that the Saints really should have won. They played it without Taysom Hill. Deontay Harris got hurt. There was no Latavius Murray. Drew Brees, as I mentioned, was playing through all those injuries and others. There was reported he had shoulder and foot injuries as well. And they still, all that being said, had a chance to win that. They were winning in the third quarter. The Jared Cook fumble, we don't need to talk about that. Michael Thomas was a shell of himself. He didn't catch a pass. And if Michael Thomas isn't catching a pass, Michael Thomas isn't actually on the field. But I digress. That was the decision they made. And what it did was it gave them a chance to win with Drew Brees, but it cost them Teddy Bridgewater. The following season, the Panthers came out and they offered him the bag. They gave him 3 years, $63 million, $62 million, something in that range. And he took it. It was a similar thing that the Dolphins did a year before, and he turned it down. And that was a move to me that indicated that he was ready to be the starting quarterback for the Saints. The Saints were ready to make him the starting quarterback. It was just a question of how long Drew Brees was going to play. Now, fast forward 2 years later, what exactly has changed to lead you to think the Saints are not still confident that Teddy Bridgewater can lead that team. Well, the obvious answer is Sean Payton is no longer the head coach, but Pete Carmichael is still the offensive coordinator. Dennis Allen is the head coach. Mickey Loomis is the GM. Everyone who was ready to make that decision is still there. So if you end up in a situation where Jameis Winston is priced out, which I think he will be, Teddy Bridgewater's the guy. Why would you go with Mitch Trubisky? Why would you give up the assets to go with Jimmy Garoppolo when you know that Teddy is there and he's able to lead that team in a way you need it to? I don't think it's a question of why should you. I think it's a question of why not now? And to me, that answer is simple. Go for it. Bring him back. Because what it allows you to do is you can retain pieces on defense. You don't have to worry about over-leveraging yourself in the quarterback position financially, and you're able to find a young quarterback in the draft and see what happens there. Or, if you love Ian Book, you can see what happens with him. But I just don't see any other logical option than bringing Teddy in. And why should you? Why are you overthinking this? Because he had a couple rough seasons with teams that are constantly firing coaches. The Panthers were good early on when Christian McCaffrey was healthy. Christian McCaffrey got hurt and everything went off the rails. That's not Teddy's fault. They decided to move on to Sam Darnold. Things didn't get better. Teddy went out to Denver. He won the quarterback battle there. He was good enough to beat out Drew Lock. And Denver kind of just eroded around him. But nothing has changed relative to Teddy's ability to be a starting quarterback. What's changed is that the Saints can now go bring him in at a price point that is a lot more digestible so that they can manage their salary cap, so that they can retain that star-studded defense, so that they can go sign Marcus Williams, so that they can be adjustable. They don't need to be shelling out assets for Jimmy Garoppolo. They don't need to be shelling out assets for Gardner Minshew. They're not going to draft a quarterback and plop him in as the day one starter. And Mickey Loomis essentially said that, especially sitting at number 18, because you don't know who's going to be there. So you can go to the combine, you can figure out who you want, you can figure out who you think the best quarterback is, and you can try to draft him. You don't know if he's going to be there at 18. You can go up and get him, but that's expensive. Now here's what Mickey said last week.
I think that would be difficult, just because when you're picking in the latter half of the draft, you just don't know what's going to fall to you, number one. So it's hard to target someone. And look, there, even if you decide you want to make a move forward, you're limited in that. Moving from where we're at 18 into the top 8 or 10 picks is really difficult. It's expensive in terms of the draft capital you have to give up, and so it's unrealistic. Typically, it can happen. It's not impossible, but pretty difficult to predict.
And he's right. Look at what the Bears had to give up to go get Justin Fields. It's about the same trade. I think they went 20 to 11, but it's about the same range. You want to give up your next year's first round pick to go get a quarterback who isn't good enough to be picked in the top 5? Who isn't a surefire pick in the top 10? No, you don't. So that doesn't make sense. You're not going to do that. And so the question becomes, what's Jameis's market? Well, you look at, it's expensive. It is expensive to bring in an established quarterback in the NFL. It is. And it doesn't really matter who that player is. We're not even talking about, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, the first ballot Hall of Famers. Look at Kirk Cousins. Goes and signs with the Vikings in 2018. 3 years, $83 million. Kirk Cousins. Mr. League Average. That's essentially who that's a league average quarterback making bank. You look at what the Panthers shelled out to get Teddy. A guy who apparently is not good enough to be a starting quarterback, which I learned this week on Twitter when I said that he was my presumptive pick there, assuming Jameis gets priced out. Now, I don't think that there's a debate that Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater in terms of arm talent, in terms of pedigree. He went number 1 overall in the draft. There's not a question there. But as we see year after year after year, arm talent does not win games. Arm talent does not win Super Bowls. Players win Super Bowls. And there's a lot more that goes into winning football than simply being able to throw the ball on a line 80 yards down the field. It helps. But all these guys can make all the throws. They made it to the NFL because they can make all the throws. And it's about comfort. It's about understanding the system. It's about playing within it. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think that Jameis and the Saints offense are a good fit. I really don't. And it has nothing to do with Jameis not being able to run it. I just think that when you look at a guy like Teddy, he is himself, right? He fits where he fits, and he does what he does, and he is that quarterback. When I watched Jameis Winston in the Saints offense, when I watched him all through training camp, and I watched him all through the season, it felt like he was trying to be somebody else. He was trying to fit that system, and he did a good job doing that. But that's not what you want. You don't want a guy who's sanding off his edges so he can fit a square peg in a round hole. If you want Jameis Winston as your quarterback, if you want that gunslinger, if you want that guy who's going to push, you got to allow him to be that. And the moment that really crystallizes that for me was week 3 against the Patriots. Saints go into Foxborough, they win that game. And the moment specifically is down at the goal line. Jameis has got defenders all over him. He's falling to the ground. He just throws it up to the back of the end zone. Marquez Callaway makes a great play, comes down with it. It's a touchdown. And, it's like classic Jameis, right? Classic Jameis. Well, he did nip the turnover-prone tag, and I give him all the credit in the world for doing that. But you could see at times he was like working against himself. And he comes off the field, and Sean Payton gets in his face, and what does Jameis say? He says, it's God's plan. And Sean Payton, says something along the lines of, well, the other team has a God too. And, he's not a fan of that. And I understand why he's not a fan of that, but it's a good example of, kind of this battling ideology of, Jameis wants to push the ball down the field. He wants to get it deep. He wants to take risks. And this whole system the Saints have built is kind of this risk-averse, especially now, this kind of risk-averse, make sure you allow the defense to win you a game. And I don't think he's the right guy to do that. And if you're playing for the next few years to ride out this championship caliber defense and see how many games you can win with it, I don't think he's the guy that you overspend for. And there are teams who are out there just waiting to give somebody a Mr. League average Kirk Cousins style 3-year, $83 million contract. And I don't think the Saints are going to be the team that wants to or should do that right now. That's my take. And I just think with all of the love and support that Teddy got from this organization, from this city, all the work he put in, the understanding he has of the system, why wouldn't you bring him back? Why wouldn't you bring him back if you can get him at 2 years, $18 million? You can draft a guy who he can learn at his feet to get that system underway. Sorry about the dog barking, but he's mad and I'm mad. And I think that's the answer. And I think Sean Payton told us this indirectly. And when I think about what Sean Payton would have done in this quarterback situation, and I think about, why Teddy Bridgewater left, it makes so much sense to bring him back. It really does. It just makes all the sense in the world to bring him back. And I'm not sure why there's this level of resentment around bringing him back. I think you can be a fan of Jameis Winston and appreciate that a guy coming off a major knee injury who's going to get a big deal in free agency is not the guy who makes sense for the Saints in their current cap situation with their current roster makeup. He's going to get a big deal. And I think Mickey Loomis, kind of indirectly pointed that out when he spoke at the Combine last week. And he was asked about the quarterback position. He wasn't asked about Jameis Winston directly. And here's what he said.
We're approaching it, with a sense of urgency, that's for sure. But look, we, hopefully we can get something done with, with one of the guys that's available. And Jameis is certainly an option for us, and hopefully we're an option for him as well. So, we'll just, we'll go through the process here and see what happens.
There's a few things that stand out there. One, that he immediately went to Jameis Winston as kind of the quote-unquote option, as he put it. He didn't say, Jameis is the starter, we want to get him back. He said he's an option, and he hopes that the Saints are an option for Jameis as well. It sounds more like a sales pitch than a plan, because I think he's aware that there's going to be a serious market for Jameis Winston. Whether that's the Steelers, whether that's the Colts, who just traded Carson Wentz to the Commanders, who would have been an option for Jameis Winston in free agency before that, whether it's the Texans, whether it's any of these teams, whether it's the Seahawks, whether it's any of these teams that are in need of a veteran, stable starting quarterback, and they have money to throw around. The Saints don't. The Saints will have to rely on him coming in at a number that they can stomach. And it's not a situation where you can be proactive. You have to wait and be reactive. And Jameis would be crazy to not continue to demonstrate his knee getting back to health and rehab and then see what kind of offer he can get. Right? Now, going off of that a little more, he chose to mention Jameis Winston by name. There was an opportunity for him to mention Ian Book, mention Taysom Hill. He did not mention either of those names. These are guys who are on the roster and feasibly would be in contention for the starting quarterback position. They were not named in Mickey Loomis's comments, and I think that's telling that the starting quarterback, whoever it may be, is not on the roster right now. And of course, Jameis Winston's included in that group of players not on the roster. But I really do think that it's Jameis or Teddy. And I think that Teddy would be the quarterback right now had Drew Brees retired after the 2019 season. I truly believe that. And I believe Teddy's still the guy. I think that's why he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints. Now, thank you for hearing me out on that. Again, I will say that this is a lot more predictive than it is analytical. I'm not coming out here and saying that Teddy Bridgewater is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston from a talent perspective, but I do think he makes a heck of a lot of sense in this situation, and I think he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints in the 2022 season. And I don't think the Saints have a lot of say in the matter as it pertains to Jameis Winston, just like they didn't have a lot of say in the matter as it pertained to Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, because they got priced out. The Broncos gave up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris to bring in Russell Wilson. The Packers agreed to pay Aaron Rodgers $200 million over the next 4 years to keep Aaron Rodgers. That's the going rate for some of these quarterbacks. And if the only thing that's changed as it pertains to the Saints and Teddy Bridgewater is that instead of having to shell out 3 years and $63 million like the Panthers did, you can get him at a reasonable rate and build around him, I think that is a smart play. I think that is the logical route to go. And I don't see this negative perception of Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback. I really don't. Because what's changed? What's changed for him? What's changed for the Saints other than the defense is better? And there's no starting quarterback on the team that he has to sit behind. I also think there's probably going to be a lot of enthusiasm on the end of Teddy Bridgewater, who obviously, as we've mentioned, the Broncos are no longer in contention for because they just traded for Russell Wilson and he's not going to sign to be a backup. To come back to New Orleans, to come back here where his name was once chanted from the rafters, even after he stopped being the starting quarterback in the 2019 season. He's got a nickname. He's a star person. And I think the Saints know that. I think the locker room understands that. And, there's a reason that everything he did went viral when he was with the Saints. He's Teddy. When I talked to Sean Payton a few weeks back, he pointed to, probably the best trait about Teddy Bridgewater is not that he's able to be a clone of Drew Brees. It's that he's Teddy. It's that he does his thing and he does it his way. And I think that's what makes him a viable quarterback for the Saints. And that's my take. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, WWL Radio Digital Sports Producer. Check out the latest headlines over at WWL.com and Odyssey.com/WWL. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. That's Nowak. Thanks, y'all. Peace.